good, everybody, man? Good to see everyone already in here. I appreciate y'all tuning in here on the Blue Bloods on this Tuesday night. But like I said, man, I put it in the chat. We're gonna have to discuss real quick these college football playoff rankings because I personally can't believe what I just witnessed. And listen, everyone knows I ride for Cincinnati. I don't have a problem with Cincy at 6, especially because if Bama loses to Georgia, they're out of it. Ohio State and Michigan State still have to play. There's some teams in front of them that can lose, but for Oregon to be number 4, man, I mean, I'm telling y'all, I pride myself on like kind of preparing y'all for everything, talking about everything I can research. I would have bet my life savings Oregon wouldn't have been in the top 4, and they find themselves in that number 4 spot. And I think what we saw tonight, guys, really and truly is one. Oklahoma, they care about what happens on the field because Oklahoma dropping all the way outside the top 7, man, was also very, very surprising. Even at 9-0, they said those struggle wins against Tulane, West Virginia, Nebraska, Kansas, it really hurt Oklahoma. And now they're in a really bad place, even though they do have 2 top 12 games coming up against Baylor and Oklahoma State. But Oregon at 4 was crazy, but they did rank them above Ohio State due to that head-to-head win. So right now what's happening is that win over Ohio State is propping Oregon up all the way to the number 4 spot, which I did not think would happen. I'm very interested to see how the committee views, Ohio State as they get into the meat of their schedule, how they view Cincinnati down the stretch. But, like Lawrence said here, Cincinnati does not have many chances for a decent win. SMU dropped off the map last week after a loss. Houston has been inconsistent, but they're still pretty good. But they might not have a ranked game, the rest of the season. So it's going to be a very, very tough road. And yeah, Crazy Criminal, like you said, since he's going to be ranked lower because of their conference strength of schedule. The only thing that can save Cincinnati, guys, is if Notre Dame wins out and finds themselves maybe in like the top 6 or 7 if the chaos ensues in front of them. So for me, Notre Dame is going to be really going to be tied at the hip with Cincinnati this year. So we will definitely see. Coach Simmons, Cincy is probably livid right now. That is going to be an entire problem. But guys, like the video if you're in here, man. Hope y'all having a great Tuesday night, man. We had some comments before the show. So Crazy Criminal wanted to talk about with James Madison headed to the Sun Belt, which we're going to talk about as our first topic, the latest on conference realignment. There's rumblings of Hampton and Howard possibly going to the CAA, which will put the MEAC in a lot of trouble. Listen, as Crazy Criminal, I know a lot of people have pushed back on me in terms of what I said on the roundtable last week with Scotty, but these SWAC and MEAC teams are going to get calls from these top FCS conferences. Listen, with Sam Houston State and Jacksonville State headed off to the FBS, like we're about to talk about, those conferences are going to be looking for top teams to replace them. So don't be surprised if some of these top MEAC teams and top SWAC teams get calls from top conferences and start moving around. And if Hampton and Howard leave, man, that is going to put the CAA in a lot of it's going to help the CAA, but put the MEAC in a lot of trouble. But also, Crazy Criminal, there are rumblings that one of the teams that some of these FBS conferences are considering is North Carolina A&T, which would be a huge hit to the Big South, who then would probably reach back in the MEAC and try to replace North Carolina A&T if they decided to move up to the FBS level. And I talked to a North Carolina A&T subscriber, and he said the interest is really there between North Carolina A&T and some of these other top conferences or some of these group of 5 conferences at the FBS level. But let me kind of update y'all on the latest here. So we'll start with the CUSA. That's the latest news. They're going to add Liberty, New Mexico State, Jacksonville State, and Sam Houston State. So that means 2 of the powers in the FCS and Jacksonville State and Sam Houston are headed to the FBS. Now, I don't know when this goes into effect. I'm assuming probably next season or maybe even the season after. Sometimes they give these teams a grace period. But Liberty, New Mexico State, Jacksonville State, and Sam Houston are headed to the CUSA. Those are the 4 teams they've added thus far, because if you remember, the CUSA, they lost Charlotte, FAU, North Texas, Rice, UAB, UTSA, Southern Miss, Old Dominion, and Marshall. I mean, the CUSA got ransacked, through this whole realignment. So they have a lot of holes to fill, and they have a lot of spots to fill, and they don't want to collapse in this time of realignment. So adding 2 of the powers from FCS really is a chance here, but I don't think they're done. So I was talking to someone who's real connected with this conference, and some of the potential additions honestly could be UConn, which I don't think would add much value. UConn has been I would say, I'm trying to be as nice as possible, they've been a dumpster fire program. They're also looking at Southeastern Louisiana out of the Southland, who has been decimated by expansion as well. So Southeastern Louisiana is a top 10 team in the FCS right now. So adding them with Sam Houston State and Jacksonville State really gives them 3 of the better options from the FCS level in that geographical region. There's also rumors they could try to reach out to Nicholls State as well, out of the Southland as well. And then an outside team that I heard mentioned, and I know people are going to push back on it, and nothing's confirmed and nothing has happened yet, but I've heard that the CUSA is going to reach out to Prairie View after the successful season they've had under Dooley this season, and they really want to try to establish that Texas presence, especially adding Sam Houston, and also possibly reaching out to Prairie View to try to convince them to get into Texas with them, especially after losing North Texas and UTSA in this realignment push. So those are some of the teams that the CUSA really could be looking at. Now, this all really started with the AAC. They were the ones that added Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, UTSA after losing Cincy, Houston, and UCF to the Big 12. But based on some people I talked to, they're probably done for now. The only expansion that the AAC could possibly do is they're going to reach out to some Mountain West teams like a Boise State potentially to see if they would want to join. But with the Mountain West planning their own expansion, I personally don't believe that right now the AAC is going to make another move, because I feel like they're just about at capacity right now. But let me get to some of y'all's comments before I get into this. Let's see. T said James Madison is going to the FBS. They are. The CAA is a top FCS conference. Howard got stomped by Richmond this year. Yeah, Lawrence, it doesn't look promising. Liberty, I believe, has already accepted their invite, or it's at least reported that they're going to accept the invite. So it looks like Liberty is moving into a conference. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure when that's going to happen, but right now it looks like Liberty is headed to the CUSA. T said Richmond is always 1 or 2 games from the playoffs, but if you get stomped by Richmond, it only gets worse. EA said Southern Miss should have left a while ago. I agree with you, man. Southern Miss was, EA, I don't think a lot of people realize how good Southern Miss was in the 90s to early 2000s, really even the mid 2000s. That program was a group of 5 terror for Power 5 teams to play. They would consistently compete with the best teams in the country, and then something just kind of happened where they really fell off. So I think Southern Miss moving conferences is going to be really big for recruiting, and potentially could bring in some more revenue so they can try to get back to where they were in the early 2000s. Crazy Criminal said the Sun Belt could have added Liberty with Old Dominion, James Madison, and Marshall. Crazy Criminal, there is some James Madison news. I'll get to that in just a second. James Madison is definitely going to be one of the teams you see moving up, and it is with the Sun Belt. But Liberty went a different direction. Coach Simmons says PV is the founding member. Yeah, that's the only hold up. Coach Simmons is there's rumors that they're going to offer it, but I just don't know if a founding member of a conference wants to be the first one to kind of dip out and leave, especially when you look at all the attention and all the advancements the SWAC is making right now. Sonic Boom said, well, there goes the potential battle of JSUs. Sonic Boom, Jackson State is not afraid to schedule teams in the Sun Belt CUSA under Dion, so maybe that could be a potential, quote unquote money game for Jackson State in the future between Jacksonville State and Jackson State because they're so close. Coach Simmons, I will get to Jackson State and FAMU. There is a conference that I think could reach out, and I'll get to that in a second. PV definitely has the facilities for the move, and right now they're on that upward trajectory with that team that they have this year. They're probably going to get to the SWAC Championship. I would imagine we'll get into that in our last topic, but Prairie View definitely has the facilities. Nicholas Sharp said HBCUs try not to be stuck in the past anymore. Yeah, man, everything's moving upward, and that's why conference realignment is so important for these teams in the SWAC and MEAC right now to really make their move and set themselves up for the future. Liberty definitely going to a conference. They're good. Sonic Boom said USM wanted to follow Memphis, but it didn't happen. Yeah, they just Sonic Boom. They just didn't have the AAC has been so good recently. You look at UCF, you look at Cincinnati now, you look at even some of these SMU teams that they've had in the top 15. Southern Miss just hasn't been on that level right now. So for me, you know, I don't know exactly what Southern Miss could have done. I think moving to the Sun Belt was the best for them. T said most of the HBCUs would get stomped. USM did shut out Alabama, or at least beat them fairly. I guess they beat them in convincing fashion in early 2000s. Incarnate World, Incarnate Word, I believe it was 41-9. They beat Prairie View in week 2 this year. Crazy Criminal. Yeah, so let's just get to that Crazy Criminal. That was one of the ones I wanted to talk about. Is there's a conversation right now between the Big Sky and the Mountain West about potentially some of these top teams from the Big Sky moving to the Mountain West, and same for like a North Dakota State, a South Dakota State, some of those Missouri Valley Conference powerhouses. Now, the number one school I've been hearing, and I don't know how plausible it is, I'm really not sure about their financial situation, but I know they have the talent. Eastern Washington has been a name I have repeatedly heard potentially moving to the Mountain West from the FCS level. You know, that right now they got Eric Barrier is probably, I would say it is probably the odds-on favorite to win the Walter Payton Award this year for the best FCS player in college football. But Eastern Washington to the Mountain West would be interesting. One, let's just say this. This is kind of off topic, but what about the field battle between the Boise State blue field and the Eastern Washington red field? That would be a perfect rivalry, and also it fits geographically. They're bringing something to the table. They've been a consistent top 10 FCS team year in and year out. You look at some, the Montana States up there in the Big Sky, they all could play big factors in this. So the Mountain West, that's where I was going, is Eastern Washington's the name I've heard, North Dakota State potentially, South Dakota State, a Montana State. All those teams are probably going to be reached, at least be reached out by the Mountain West to see if they want to join the conference. Now, the other FCS news is the Southland is pretty much, from what I've heard, is going to probably collapse after this weekend, man. The Southland losing McNeese State and Incarnate Word to the WAC are terrible. I mean, that was a terrible loss for them because they're already shorthanded. They were adding Texas A&M Commerce from the D2. So what does the Southland Conference do with those remaining teams? Does it collapse and the remaining teams get split between the ASUN or maybe even the WAC? And this is a I guess a storyline that I've talked to BJ Jones about in the HBCU Twitter Spaces. Why wouldn't the SWAC maybe look to add some, one of these top teams from the Southland, like a Southeastern Louisiana, who has Cole Kelly, who is a potential winner. He could be a back-to-back winner. You can add someone like that. You potentially could even get I'm blanking on the name of Norfolk State, someone like that. Would the SWAC be interested in adding one of these teams from the Southland that that potentially could go elsewhere? Would it add value as one? And two, would it I guess go against where the SWAC wants to go in the future? And two, would adding these teams make the SWAC more convincing to the FCS playoff committee, since that's kind of where it seems like it's heading? And would these teams sign up knowing that they have a contract right now with the Celebration Bowl, that if they came in and won the SWAC, that they would have to potentially go play the Celebration Bowl. There's a lot of questions there, but the ASUN and the WAC are probably going to look to scoop up the remaining Southland teams and see kind of what happens. But if that doesn't happen, I was looking at some D2 teams that, I want that potentially could move up. You look at a West Florida. Everyone in here knows what West Florida is. They just got done beating McNeese State this year in the Southland already. Texas A&M Commerce has already accepted their invite to the Southland. You look at possibly a Valdosta State, a West Georgia, a Bowie State. Some of these D2 teams absolutely could move up to the Southland and really save that conference. It could become like, a ground of development for some of these D2 teams that want to come up and test their wit at the FCS level. So that's probably what's going to happen to the Southland. In my opinion, you got to go D2 because there's not a lot of FCS conferences that you can pull in and say, like, you can improve your team by coming to our conference. So for me, I personally say that they would bring some D2 teams up and try to build it from there, because the Sun Belt right now, guys, they've already added Marshall, Southern Miss, and Old Dominion. And right now, supposedly, James Madison has accepted the invite to the Sun Belt, but they're working out some behind-the-scenes things before that's officially announced. But what I've heard is that they're also going to look to possibly add some more FCS teams to come along with James Madison. You're looking at a Kennesaw State, I've heard has been mentioned. They have the enrollment, they have the fan support, and Kennesaw State right now has been one of the better teams in the FCS. This is where North Carolina A&T is coming into play, a Monmouth. And could the Sun Belt potentially reach out to a Jackson State, a Florida A&M, one of those teams? They're probably going to try to add one or two more FCS teams to come along with James Madison and potentially bring those programs up and have these up-and-coming programs in their conference, especially when you look at how strong the Sun Belt's been. And y'all have to remember, they have the blueprint. Now, everyone who's saying, do you know how hard it is to move up? It is definitely hard, but the Sun Belt has done it with a Coastal Carolina, with an Appalachian State. They have the blueprint right now to bring some of these FCS teams up and make them, make them successful. And then, like what Nicholas said, what about a Tennessee State? They've been balling in the OVC. Listen, I did not see Tennessee State playing as well as they have in the OVC, but they have a chance to win the OVC this year in Eddie George's first year. That would be huge for that program. So that is also a team that you could possibly consider. So let me catch up on y'all's comments. Coach Simmons says Montana in the Pac-10. Imagine them in the Mountain West. It's your boy Oz. Eastern Washington, North Dakota State, James Madison are all considered for the Mountain West. T said, I hope they stay FCS. Eastern Washington will probably struggle for a few years, but they might be able to compete. Montana as well. T said, coaching matters, and Cardinate doesn't have the best recruits, but their coaches are good. It's your boy Oz. The SWAC won't add any school that's not an HBCU. That's their thing. Yeah, that's the only question with the SWAC is some of these schools could be trying to beat down the door to come in. It's just, would they allow some of these schools to come in that potentially could add value on the football field? And, I really don't know what the other sports are like. I'm really just a football guy, so I'm not sure if they can add any value elsewhere. Sonic Boom said I could see them adding a team like that, but they're scared of an outside team coming in and taking over. That's fair enough. EA said West Florida to the SWAC would be cool. I don't know about the enrollment size of the sports requirements. I'm pretty sure all the sports requirements would be filled, EA. I'm not sure what their enrollment numbers are, but I know a lot of people who go there. I'm actually reaching out to a guy I played with in high school who was on that national championship team at West Florida, and that'll be something to talk to him about what he feels like in the program. Could they compete at the next level? Leon said Valdosta State is a good one. West Florida should come up for real. Nicholas Sharp said kids going to these HBCUs love playing these other schools that they couldn't get into. That's a recruiting chip with the 5-star jersey HBCU school. T said he would not go to the MEAC or Southland. West Florida could come up. The SWAC would take some MEAC schools. That's the other thing, Oz. if that Howard rumor is true, would the MEAC and SWAC just go ahead and merge? Because I don't think the SWAC would want the MEAC just to kind of fall apart and everyone just go across the country. So maybe that the SWAC would at least lend a helping hand and be like, y'all can come into the SWAC and we could get this thing together. So we'll definitely see on that. Let's see. Hickbottom sucked the second half. UAPB got like 5K people. The D2 schools have more students. It's your boy Oz. The SWAC is planning to move up as a conference because the HBCU attendance is reliant on the classics and long-time rivalries. OVC teams, yeah, Western Illinois and Southern Indiana have been considered as well. Jalen Jones going to Cookman, and I don't know. I don't know how much of an impact he's really going to have. So we'll see. But Coach Simmons, will the SWAC drop Valley and add Albany State? I can't see the SWAC dropping anybody. Coach Simmons would be shocked the SWAC just cut loose, just because Valley's history and everything. Like, I just can't see the SWAC cutting one of their members like that, because everyone just says that Valley plays everyone real tough. And yes, their facilities and the field this weekend was atrocious. I just can't see, the SWAC just kind of throwing them to the wolves, because where would Valley go if the SWAC cut them? They'd probably have to drop down to the Division II, like the CIA or something like that. I personally don't see them cutting ties right now with anybody in the SWAC. Underscore, if JSU and FAMU gets an invitation, I don't know about y'all, but if I see a letter like that and I work higher up, I'm taking it. I got the attention of alumni support. That's what I'm saying. Underscore. If any SWAC teams get an invite to the CUSA, to the Sun Belt, the AAC, even potentially anything like that, you have to take it, because odds are they probably wouldn't just take one SWAC team. So how it would probably go is they probably take a top 2, maybe even like a 4-team squad to the next level, and they'd probably try to keep it along the classics, or take a real rivalry. But for me, if I'm Jackson State and I have all this hype, I have all the attendance, I have this team that I think can compete on this level, why would you not want to take the chance and get those players? There's more exposure, the better funding, the more revenue, all those type of things could really benefit Jackson State, because if you're in that conference and Jackson State makes a big bowl game or something like that, that could really help these schools. So for me, I agree. If I get the invitation, I'm personally taking it if I'm Jackson State. But we'll see. Dancy needs to strengthen his relationship with Prime, do more cross marketing. EA, they're a community college in Mississippi who have larger enrollments than Valley. Man, I can't speak on enrollment, so that's tough, though. Their attendance will suffer a lot. Look at A&T. So it's your boy Oz. It would suffer a bit, but at the same time, those schools like a FAMU, a Jackson State, I think the fan bases of those teams themselves can really carry those programs. Now, I heard the new stadium for Jackson State is going to be reduced a bit, so probably be somewhere around 40,000. And FAMU's already selling out, building their own new stadium. So you'll have the new stadium, you'll have your fan base hyped up because you're going to be playing at a higher level. Your recruiting is going to pick up because you're going to the FBS level. So for me, I don't think the attendance would suffer as much. And I do agree with what Sonic Boom said right here. North Carolina A&T's attendance is suffering because of how they're playing. They're just getting beat right now. Monmouth handled them this weekend. Kennesaw State shut them out. They lost a tough game to Furman early in the season. The Duke game, they got handled. So for me, I just think the North Carolina A&T fan base is already kind of checked out into next year, which happens at every level. I mean, right now, if your team's already out of it, it's hard to get your fan base pumped up just to come see a game, unless it's a classic, a big rivalry game, something like that. It's really hard to get your fans involved in the program, personally right now when you're not playing very well. And North Carolina A&T just has not played very well right now. You have to win. You know how our HBCUs are. He said, yep, Jackson State's new stadium was around 40K maximum, and you're looking at about a sold-out stadium. Yeah, right now, Jackson State's averaging, I think, if I remember the Tiger Talk post, it was like 37 or 38,000 a game right now. So you're averaging damn near a sellout already. And right now, so this is what gets me is like, instead of playing like a Delta State or a winless Bethune-Cookman, you're going to be playing some better teams that, as much as people want to say the attendance will suffer, I think the teams at the FBS level, they have a bigger, I guess, fan base that always travels with them. So like, if you go to the Sun Belt, Appalachian State, say what you want, they bring fans almost everywhere they go. You look at a Coastal Carolina, they bring fans wherever they go. You have a bit more of a following too with some of these FBS teams than you would like a Southeastern Louisiana, a Sam Houston State, someone like that. I think your FBS teams, if you're moving up to the FBS level, the attendance thing would kind of work itself out as well, because there are a lot of teams. I mean, Appalachian State is averaging almost a sellout a game. It's just their stadium's capped at 30K. They only have a 30K person stadium, and I believe they're averaging like right around like 29 or 30 in attendance. And at that Coastal Carolina game, they put like 3,100 or 31,000 in there. So for me, I think the attendance will work itself out at the FBS level, especially when you look at how strong of a following a lot of these SWAC teams already have, and especially Jackson State. And I bring up Jackson State because I think they're the best prepared right now to make that jump in terms of hype, talent, stadium capacity, everything like that. I think Jackson State and FAMU would be the two I would pick. Coach Simmons says K-State is always sold out. Yeah, 27,000 for App State. New stadiums should be around 45 to 48,000. I think that's perfect because, to be honest, the thing that with Jackson State, the attendance is so impressive. But man, do you know how hard it is to bring 60,000 people to a game? I mean, there's Power 5 teams that really struggle to bring 60,000 people to a game. So what I think it will do is it'll make the intimate experience better. So the best comparison to make the point I'm trying to make is Oregon. They have probably not even a top 50, biggest stadium in the country, but they're consistently the loudest because what they did is build an intimate environment where you're right up on the field, the fan base is involved, and now they're always one of the loudest stadiums in the country, and they have a real home field advantage. So what I think happens is when you got a 60,000 person stadium, it makes it a bit less personal, unless you're a Georgia, Alabama, or someone that can sell out 102,000, and then that's a real home field advantage. But for the group of five, for these lower Power 5, I think 40 to like 50,000 is perfect because you can build it in an intimate way where your fans are going to be right on top of the field and teams are not going to want to travel there. And so that's what I'm really looking for Jackson State. And I haven't seen any renderings or anything like that, but I did see the renderings for FAMU's, or at least the supposed renderings. It's going to be really nice, and I like how they designed it, so I'm really excited to see how they execute that down at FAMU. Sonic Boom said people will like the intimate experience. That's why Tennessee State needs to get back on campus. Yeah, that's why I don't fault Tennessee State for their attendance issues. I mean, when you look at any program that plays in an NFL stadium or a stadium that's not theirs, they always have problems selling out. You look, even when UAB played off campus, they had a lot of problems in terms of attendance as well. The part of the college experience, and this is what I try to tell people, I can only relate back to my college experience at Auburn. I could see the stadium from my dorm room. When you go to Auburn's campus, the stadium, it looks like they built the campus around the stadium. And so people can walk from their dorm rooms. You can tailgate right around the stadium and be in the middle of everything. And so for me, it helps the attendance and it helps the fan experience and everything to have your stadium as close to the heart of campus as humanly possible. That's what a lot of these SEC programs do, is they have their stadium in the middle of their campus. And so having an off-campus stadium that's not personal to you, that you don't have a connection with, I feel like really hurts attendance, fan participation, and just passion for the game. I guess at the game, fans will be so close to JSU Stadium. It still has to have the ramp. Nicholas Sharp said it's not that simple at Tennessee State. Coach Simmons says the Alamo Dome UTSA averages 27K, but it's loud in a 50K stadium. Leon, enrollment doesn't matter with FBS. You only need 8 to 10K. Tennessee politics have different vision on TSU on and off the field, more off the field though. Yeah, you see, I'm not going to ever talk about the politics off the field. I don't know enough about that at all, so I don't want to really get into that. When the Titans came to Nashville, we jumped on that bandwagon and it backfired. I agree. Davidson, VMI, Wofford all have less than 1,900 enrolled. EA said Miami and Pittsburgh have that issue. Yeah, EA, that's my biggest critique about the Miami in the Hurricanes program. Why in the world don't you have a stadium in South Beach on that campus where your students can be right there in the action? And if you're an ACC program, you don't have to be that big. Like I think Clemson's only in like the 80,000 ish range right now. So for me, if you're Miami, why not build like a personal, like a 60s, maybe 65,000 person stadium, and there you can get people to come if you're good in Miami. It was done in the 80s, done in the 90s, done in the early 2000s. The biggest thing is they just haven't been winning, which has only compounded their problems. But I agree, having Pittsburgh games in Heinz Field for a college atmosphere is not great. I am the biggest. Listen, y'all will never find me on here saying I love neutral site games. I think every team that if you're going to play an out-of-conference opponent, you should play a home and home because there's nothing like going to a stadium in that city on that campus and being in that environment. And so for me, home stadiums are the biggest thing because and every alumni in this chat, wherever you went to school, you know what I'm talking about when I say you have a sense of pride about your stadium. If you're a Jackson State alum, you kind of have a sense of pride about the Vet. If you're at Southern, you have a sense of pride about Mumford. I'm an Auburn alum. I have a sense of pride about Jordan Hare. When I hear someone talk about Jordan Hare, I'm like, hey, put some respect on Jordan Hare in that environment. And all in Eastern Washington, they definitely do with the red turf and that environment up there with the red field. They have a sense of pride about their stadium because it's theirs. And so for me, I don't like when you go play in someone else's stadium. So for me, I personally think you should have your home stadium. And so that's because of that personal connection of you being there week in and week out and going to the games and things like that. Let's see. HBCU taking over like back in the great days. I want the SWAC to become the powerhouse conference of the FCS. Hey, they're on their way, man. Jackson State's going to be a problem in the next few years. I'm just telling you with what's happening. Let's see, the Vet or the people from the old days with the campus stadium. People from U of M have that feeling about the Liberty Bowl. That's right. I mean, exactly, Sonic Boom. The Memphis fans have that. I had an uncle who played for Memphis, and it's the same way for him. And Starkville has the Cowbell Stadium. I mean, I dare y'all. Listen, I don't know how into the Power Five y'all are. I dare y'all to say one bad thing about Death Valley to an LSU grad or an LSU fan. You cannot talk crap about Death Valley to an LSU fan unless you're ready for a fight. And I'm just going to be completely honest with you. That it's going to be a problem if you do that. It's because they have that pride of being on campus, going to that stadium, walking up to it, tailgating with everybody. So for me, that's going to be the biggest difference for Tennessee State. But real quick, we'll just skip the playoff talk for right now. We kind of did it earlier, and I'll just move it to next week because we kind of got into this FCS topic. But breaking down the remaining paths to the SWAC championship real quick, and then I'll take y'all's questions for like the last 30 minutes or so of the show. I've seen a lot of misinformation about who still has a chance at the SWAC. Teams have clinched already, everything like that. Listen, anybody who says Jackson State, Prairie View, anyone has clinched anything is wrong. The race is still wide open in both divisions right now. Though it doesn't work where you just beat your division now and you get to go to the championship game. Every conference game in the SWAC counts. And I really was shocked to see so much misinformation being spread about this because it works like this in any college football conference with a division. Like, I don't know. It was so weird seeing people like, when did this start? It's like, this has been a thing in the SEC since the 90s. So for me, man, I don't know where that misinformation came from. I appreciate you jamming sports. Definitely appreciate the support, man. But let's start over with Jackson State and FAMU. They're the only two teams in the East right now that have a chance at the SWAC championship. So the way Jackson State clinches is they have to win 2 of their last 3 games. So they play Texas Southern. They play Texas Southern, travel to Southern the next week, and then Alcorn the final week of the season will be their last 3 games. And so for me, for them to clinch, they have to win 2 out of the last 3. So they can drop a game to Southern, they can drop a game to Alcorn, get upset, they're fine. As long as they don't lose 2 games, Jackson State wins the SWAC East. All they have to do is win 2 of the last 3 games. So they completely control their destiny for the SWAC championship. Now, the only team in the East that has a shot other than Jackson State is FAMU. And so what FAMU has to do, guys, is they have to win out and then Jackson State lose 2 of their last 3 games. So the most likely scenario would be Jackson State losing to Southern and Alcorn down the stretch and FAMU winning out. In that case, even though Jackson State beat FAMU, FAMU would represent the SWAC East in the championship game because they would only have 1 conference loss and Jackson State would have 2. So when you look at FAMU's schedule, they travel to Southern this weekend, then they travel to UAPB, and then they face Bethune-Cookman in Orlando, as y'all know, in the Florida Classic. So for me, if they can get past Southern this weekend, it's clean sailing. FAMU's going to win out. I mean, UAPB and Bethune-Cookman are combined 1 for 15 this year, so FAMU has nothing to probably worry about in that one. I know Bethune-Cookman's had their number for like 8 years, but that team is not the same this year, and I think FAMU is going to handle business against Bethune-Cookman this year. So Southern on the road this weekend is really their big test, but for FAMU to get in the SWAC championship, Jackson State has to lose 2 of the last 3, and FAMU has to win all of their last 3 games. And that's the only 2 scenarios that could happen in the East. A&M's eliminated, Bama State's eliminated, and of course, as y'all know, everyone else in the bottom half of that division has been eliminated since like week 3. But on the other side, things are much, much more complicated. So Prairie View, Alcorn, and Southern still have a chance to get there. Now, let's start with the pipe dream. So Southern is still technically in it, but this weekend, as long as Prairie View wins their game this weekend, Southern is eliminated. That's it. So Southern has to win out, hope Prairie View loses all of their last 3 conference games, and needs Alcorn to lose 1 of their last 3 games. So either Alcorn needs to lose to Prairie View or Jackson State or someone like that, and that's how Southern would get in. It's probably not going to happen. They have a very tough schedule. Southern has FAMU, Jackson State, and the Bayou Classic against Grambling in New Orleans for the last week of the season. So Southern needs chaos to ensue to get them to the SWAC championship. Now, it's really Alcorn Prairie View race. So for Alcorn, they have to win out. I mean, that's they have to win out or win 2 of their final 3 games and beat Prairie View while Prairie View loses a game. So it's real complicated. So they have to beat Bethune, beat Prairie View, and probably beat Jackson State to get in. But if let's say they slip up against Jackson State, they just have to they have to beat Prairie View and hope Prairie View slips up somewhere along the line in their conference schedule. So right now, Alcorn needs some help. That loss to Southern really, really hurt them last week and really made their path to the championship pretty complicated right now. So they have to win out, or if they lose to Jackson State, they're going to need help from Prairie View right now. So they got to beat Jackson State in the last week of the season, and that is going to be a tough task if you're Alcorn right now with how you've been playing. But Prairie View controls their own destiny. They either win out, which would be the easy way to do it. They have Alabama State. They travel to Alcorn, and they have Mississippi Valley. And, of course, they got that game against Texas A&M, but that does not count for SWAC standings. So all they have to do is either win out or win 2 of their last 3 games, and then Alcorn, if Alcorn loses to Jackson State. So their path right now is clear as day to the SWAC championship. So I just wanted to lay that out for you guys because I saw a lot of people saying that Jackson State clinched the East and Prairie View's pretty much clinched the West. That's not the case. The race is still open in both divisions. And so that's how each team right now can get there. Crazy Criminal said, I think it's JSU versus either PV or Alcorn. FAMU's resume is not strong enough. Sonic Boom, we have an 8-game mandate. We went up to 9, down to 7 at one point. Okay, that makes sense. It's nothing left in this after the SWAC championship. The MEAC is trash and no playoffs. Jammin' Sports says Texas Southern dead, but will be tough. Southern is going to beat FAMU. That's a take there. That's going to be a tough game for Southern, man. Listen, because last week they put up a lot of yards, and Alcorn's defense really let them down the stretch. So I just can't see them putting up 400 plus yards on FAMU this weekend. If they put up 400 yards on FAMU's defense, it's going to be a problem. And FAMU, you're going to be looking at them sideways, like, how did you overlook Southern this weekend in Mumford? So that's going to be an interesting game. Jammin Sports said Alcorn's a huge game for Jackson State. Jackson people need that win. I agree. That game is going to be absolutely insane. PV will beat Bama State. I agree, Oz. I don't even think it's close right now. T said JSU looks like it's going to sweep the SWAC, which is expected, but it makes the SWAC not interesting. Listen, T, man, I'll give credit to Off Script right now for this, but if Jackson State wins the SWAC this year, man, you're looking at all these other programs like, what move are you going to make to compete next year? Because they're going to out recruit you. They're going to return a lot of talent. I mean, of course, they got Shador back. They return all that wide receiving core. They return most of the defense. I mean, they'll lose James Houston, Hampton, some of those guys, but they return most of the defense. And then on top of whoever they bring in, I mean, if Jackson State wins it this year, man, it's going to be tough for the SWAC to really respond to anything this year. I mean, it's going to be a whole problem if Jackson State can pull out the SWAC this year. It's your boy Oz says PV's playing better than any other team in the SWAC right now. So, Oz, I've said that, and listen, right now, if I had to say one team who I think could play Jackson State within one score, it would have to be PV. And, everyone's going to point to, oh, man, you picked A&M in the preseason and everything. That's fine. That's all preseason talk. But for me, when you look at the balance that PV has, they can run the ball well. They have a quarterback that has a lot of experience and doesn't make a lot of mistakes because he hasn't made a lot of mistakes recently, and he can push the ball down the field. That's something that Jackson State's going to have to deal with. And on top of that, they have the offensive line that has allowed the least amount of sacks in the SWAC right now. So that matchup between the O-line versus Jackson State's D-line is going to be so interesting to me. And they still have a top 3 defense. So I want to see how their defense matches up against Shador and those wide receivers. Now, the reason I would lean Jackson State right now, Oz, is because as much as they don't have a run game and the offensive line hasn't played well, that wide receiving core, man, has been a problem. I mean, Malachi Wadman's emergence in this offense has been an entire problem for the SWAC. And next year, when Wadman, Quadarius Davis, Hooks, all these guys have a year under their belt and have a year of chemistry with Shador, I have a real tough time of seeing any defense being able to hold that passing offense down. Now, they do have a lot of work with the O-line and the running game. They got to figure that out. And, we could talk about that briefly, but I don't understand how this O-line has not put it together. I mean, I understand they've had some injuries and they've been moving pieces around, but just based on pure size and talent alone, you have to be able just to play with pure aggression and at least move the line of scrimmage one way or the other. But for them to lose the line of scrimmage like they did this weekend and be held for 2 straight games under 30 rushing yards, for me, that's biggest question mark for Jackson State this year is what has happened to the run game and O-line. But I'm telling you, and I said it, I was going to say on the roundtable this week, Shador Sanders should get all their rings if they win the SWAC championship. The O-line has been dragged by Shador putting on the backpack, carrying the entire O-line and running game and carrying them to the SWAC championship because he's got no help. I mean, zero help. And, that's why I don't know if y'all watched the roundtable. Me and Scotty got into it over who should win the offensive player, who should win the SWAC offensive player of the year. And the argument was that Akil Glass, didn't have any help and his defense is atrocious and everything. But when you look at offensive help, I think Akil Glass has this similar, I don't think Akil's offensive help is any worse than what Shador has right now. So for me, at least Gary Quarles is like a top 3 leading rusher in the SWAC. You have some sort of a run game. And so for me, I think that's what really has impressed me about Shador is as a freshman with no help of the offensive line, no run game. Shador's been making plays, man, and I was wrong about him, and I've admitted that on the show. I didn't think he'd be this good this fast. And so for me, I got to eat my words on that one, man. Shador with no help has been doing it big, man. I've been super, super impressed recently. Let me find these comments. Again, would love to see a JSU Norfolk State. Dawson Odom's coach prime would be awesome. I agree with that one. That would be one hell of a game, man. McKay tricking off the game with turnovers. Jammin Sports said Norfolk State and Jackson State match up so well. I want to see it. Jackson State's definitely winning the SWAC. Hopefully, FAMU's looking forward to the Florida Classic. Alcorn still feeling it from last game. A first-year head coach sweeps your whole conference. You're too much, man. The same PV that lost to BC, that should have lost to BCU. That's a fair assessment. Quay Davis has been feasting in practice for JSU. Him, Rucker, and Weidman next year are going to be scary if they get a better O-line. And they don't even have to get a better O-line. He's doing it now. CFL, I mean, he's getting sacked a lot, and the only thing I worry about is injuries. But, I mean, he's making plays regardless of that offensive line. For me, CFL, the offensive line is going to come into, and that's why I tell people that, there's a few people who think Jackson State would run through the FCS playoffs. And I'm telling you they wouldn't because, yes, you could probably get through the first round, maybe the second round without that with the offensive line and run game they have. But when you got a matchup with a Montana, an Eastern Washington, a Montana State, Southern Illinois, South Dakota State, one of those teams, that offensive line and run game would have to be there because I don't think Jackson State's offense is good enough just to throw it a million times on one of those teams. And so I think that's the biggest thing holding them back from, if they got into the playoffs, really competing for a national championship, is they just don't have the offensive line to compete at that high of a level at the top of the FCS. Says quarterbacks makes a lot of pass touchdowns with a lot of picks. Yeah, 13 touchdowns, 7 picks. Prime needs to recruit O-line, D-line, DB, and running back depth. Yeah, depth is the biggest thing at the FCS level, Sonic Boom. If you have depth, you can beat a lot of teams because there's not a lot of teams at the FCS level that have depth. Lawrence said that PV could beat JSU. CFL podcast, I blame both the O-line and running back. The line can't get a push, and when they do, the backs have no vision. Oh, man, we back on the AOL. Hey, y'all too much with that. Let's see. Leon said JSU tailbacks have no vision. I do like Martin. Pickett doesn't fit their run scheme. Listen, Leon, when I went back and kind of watched the film, I personally think the biggest thing with Pickett is I don't think people understood how much a Malik Willis type quarterback helped Peyton Pickett. Because when you look at the scheme that Hugh Freeze ran with Malik Willis, he was always the number one running threat. So that means the defense, was the focal point. That was the focal point of their focus was Malik Willis at quarterback and what he could do with his legs. So for me, I think that opened up a lot of things for Pickett at Liberty that they don't have, with Shador right now in terms of his pure scrambling ability, because Malik Willis is that type of guy with his legs. So I think that's the biggest thing for Pickett, is that he's missing that dual threat quarterback that can take a lot of the attention away. And it opened up a lot of big holes for him at Liberty that he's not getting this year at Jackson State. Pass played 6 games. Only game he didn't throw a pick was the UAPB and the BCU game. JSU would get punished by the second round. JSU wouldn't get past the second round with that O-line. I agree. I would bet on a second round win. Pickett rushed for 1,300 last year. The coach is not using him correctly. Second round against Hughes. Second round is against all top 10 FCS teams. We'll have a new running back this season. JSU, let's win the SWAC and Celebration Bowl. That's our 2021 plans. No playoffs. I agree. When I look at Coach Prompt's plan, I think the first year he, as much as I don't think he cares about making waves, I think for his first year he kind of wants to stick to the script. He wants to come in, win the SWAC, win the Celebration Bowl, and then next year he's going to have another recruiting class to add to his depth, fix some of the main problems that he had this year, and then he's going to say, this team's ready to at least try to make a playoff run. And so let's get us in that first round, let's see if what we can do against some of these teams in the early rounds. And then that third or fourth year is really where I could see them potentially making a run at a real FCS championship. So this year was kind of, let's stick to the script, win the Celebration Bowl, win the SWAC. Let's see where we're weak, and let's fix that before we jump into the FCS playoffs, because the last thing that you want to do if you're Jackson State. So here's how I think Coach Prom's doing it, and I'm not saying this is exactly how this is how I think he's looking at it. Is the SWAC already has a perception problem in terms of the rankings, in terms of the playoff success, and everything like that. So why would you want to jump in your first full year, get handled in the second round by like a South Dakota State, get beat like 30-0 or 30-7 or something like that, and then the narrative is already there to keep you out in following years? Like, listen, we gave them a chance, and look, even Deion Sanders couldn't do it. So why not win the SWAC this year, win the Celebration Bowl, fix your problems that you saw this year, and be better equipped to make a real deep run to help at least get the SWAC and HBCU perception higher in the playoffs, because it's going to rely on that first HBCU team sneaking in, whether it be FAMU or Jackson State. Can they make a run and help that perception and help the perception problem that the SWAC has right now in the playoffs? So I think that's the smartest strategy right now, is to win a Celebration Bowl or two. And then once you get your recruiting class in and you got a chance, go in there and wreak havoc. And that's how you change the narrative, is you go in there and beat a South Dakota State. You go in there and beat a Eastern Washington, a Montana, even a North Dakota State, someone like that. That would do more than going this year a year too early and getting beat in the second round by like a Kennesaw State or somebody. That would be, for me, that's how I think he's playing this, in the long run. Blue, what names come to mind for Alabama State vacancy? So, Crazy Criminal, I haven't done a lot of research on this, but I'll give you a celebrity coach I like. And I know that some people say a celebrity coach could be considered. Some think that a celebrity coach would never be considered. If you're going to go for a celebrity coach, you have to do someone with some sort of NFL ties, someone that has a social media presence that can really get you there. So I did like the Ed Reed suggestion. I was on the Ed Reed to Southern boat last year, and a lot of people weren't on that with me. I thought he's expressed interest. He has the notoriety. He has the name. And who wouldn't get up for a Deion Sanders versus Ed Reed game? So for me, that would be a big one. But in terms of just coaching prospects in general, I really like, and I know some people won't like it, why not try to reach out to a Kevin Sumlin, who, yes, he wasn't great at Arizona. He wasn't amazing at Texas A&M outside of Johnny Manziel. But why not give him a chance to build up your program? He has the recruiting ties in Texas. He has those SEC recruiting ties, which overlay where the SWAC wants to recruit. And he's going to carry a bit of name notoriety and coaching experience that you can really build off of. And it brings a real deal Power 5 type coach to a program like Alabama State that a lot of people think are just a sleeping giant. So those are just two names off the top of my head I would initially consider right now for that opening. Hey, man, I'm definitely trying to do more lives. We just do so many episodes during the week for game previews that the nights are tough, and I got to catch up on schoolwork and stuff. But I'll definitely try to give y'all more lives. I got some things in the works. I'll announce those as soon as they happen. CFL said we're giving South Carolina State no chance at the MEAC. They're going to have a chance, but right now I think they're probably in that second, third place at best right now. It's smarter to win a Celebration Bowl this season, go after a natty next season. Also, Nicholas Sharp, thank you. This is another name that I would not mind at all. T. Martin, listen, I don't know how much a lot of y'all pay attention to Power 5. That is a legit recruiter. He has ties, he has the football background, and he has ties to the area as well. T. Martin to Alabama State is legit. He's been one of the top assistant recruiters in the country year in and year out. So I think T. Martin to Alabama State would be a great one as well. I really, really like that pick right there by Nicholas Sharp, man. I really do like that. Jammin Sports said he likes Ed Reed for that job. Let's see. I remember when Tennessee made it to the second round. We got smashed, but it's cool. Hey, at least you made it to the second round, Nick. That's the biggest thing. These schools better swallow their pride or do what it takes to compete. Hey, I completely agree. Listen. If you let's just say Coach Prom comes in and he wins the SWAC this year. Next year, I don't see a lot of people competing with what he's going to have come in. Anything could happen on the field. Let me just say that. But right now, I just can't see anyone competing. What are you going to do if? What are you going to do if he wins 2-3 SWAC championships in a row? I'm just asking. I mean, how do you compete with that? How do you go sit in a recruit's house and say, "Hey, come to the SWAC to compete against this team that has smacked us for 3 years and we had no answer for?" So for me, you got to do something. So as much as you some programs don't want a celebrity coach. I heard, Southern doesn't want a celebrity coach and this program's above this. Listen, you better get on the bandwagon or things could get ugly if you don't get a legit recruiter and a guy who can compete at all. But that celebrity coach may or may not work out in the long haul, but you can definitely build on them. I completely agree. Let's see. Pickett rushed for just over 500 yards. T is not interested in Alabama State. He wants Power 5. Let's see. He interviewed for USC. Then he get interviewed elsewhere. He's due a head coaching job. Yeah. I don't remember where he. Oh man, I don't remember. Yeah, he definitely was. So he was on the staff at USC, I believe, right after Sarkisian got fired, or was it or the Lane Kiffin staff? He was on that staff and then went to like Tennessee. I think T. Martin does want Power 5, but right now, listen, if you're Alabama State, you better throw the bank at somebody. You better throw some real money, get a real coach that can recruit, because as much as the thing is, you want to be a CEO, man. You probably want to get a guy who can be that CEO role like Coach Prom is doing and has the connections to get an offense and defensive coordinator that can really scheme and recruit as well. And you also want to have a nice balance like Jackson State has, where you have those NFL guys with NFL experience, but you balance it out with a bunch of college guys who know how to recruit right now. So for me, I personally think I understand that he would be a long shot, but for me, you at least got to take your shot if you're Alabama State, because you cannot fall behind Jackson State even further. Because if they mess up this hire, I mean, you can pretty much write it in the books, Jackson State over Alabama State for the next, however many years Dion is there. So I saw a question from CFL. I have a hunch that 4-star DB Earl Little Jr. will commit to JSU. So right now, I'm not going to lie, CFL. I'm not sure about him right now. I need to do a bit more research. But I think right now what Jackson State is doing, kind of keeping their recruiting under wraps right now, is pretty smart because no one really knows what they're doing. But if they can land a 4-star DB out of high school, that would be a huge step forward in terms of Jackson State's recruiting efforts and building a real recruiting class. Because last year they did land some, I guess, out of high school guys, but a lot of them were like transferring from other programs where they were committed. And then they had the Tennessee scandal. They had things like that, which is how they landed Wadman and how they landed Katron Evans. So for me, I think landing high school players out of, at that highly ranked would be huge for Jackson State. I still think right now they might be a little on that 8 ball in terms of landing those type of players. But for me, I'm definitely going to do more research CFL, and I'll let you know on that. But that would be interesting. T. Martins has a QB son that's committed to Miami. What a QB battle, Lawrence. Shador Sanders committed to FAU, came to the SWAC, dominated. T. Martin brings his son. Hey, that'd be interesting. Randy Moss would be a guy that would be interesting. I don't know if he has any head coaching interest, Jammin Sports. So I would have to see on that, because I know he's really into what he's doing for ESPN and the Sunday NFL countdown and things like that. So it would depend on, does he want to be a coach? And so that would be interesting. It'll be a whole different level when Graham and Alcorn did when Prom connected to it. Hey, we're definitely going to see. I was at the game Saturday. Valley's fans and football team had a lot of heart. They played everyone tough. Yeah, man, it was a game that one they got to do something about the field. I agree with y'all on that. I didn't want to harp on it on my episode, but the field was atrocious, man. And but for me, they did play tough, and what they did is one establishing the run is so important against Jackson State, and for Johnson to have that type of game really helped out their offense. And also, they did a nice job of forcing some turnovers. The muff punt was a big mistake. They intercept 2 passes from Shador. So forcing turnovers and running the ball were really the keys for Valley this weekend, and it kept them in this game. And so that would be they definitely played them tough. KJ said top college programs already built their names in big markets. The SWAC is building a foundation to make some serious move into bigger markets. They got the leverage to do what they can. Sonny Boone said throw the field and the rest away. Yeah, listen, throw the whole field away. And, the refs have been a problem consistently for weeks and weeks. So you got to throw the whole refs away as well. Kari Laws just entered the portal from Wisconsin. So it's your boy Oz, another one. Okay, so Jackson State fans, don't get too excited. So as y'all know, I'm the Power 5 guy. Wisconsin also had a running back enter the portal, and his name is Jalen Berger. He was, I'm pretty sure he was a 4, maybe borderline 5. So he was one of the best running backs in the country coming out of high school. I would love to see Jackson State try to, get Lyles and Berger in there, because I think Jalen Berger would be the best running back right now on Jackson State's team in terms of pure talent wise. And Berger had some breakout performances for Wisconsin, but with some of the running backs they had emerged this season, he just kind of got lost. He got lost in a very, very deep, I guess, a very, very deep running back room at Wisconsin. I mean, if y'all know anything about Wisconsin, it is running back, one of the running back U's, one of the offensive linemen of the U's. So for me, Kari Lyles, Jalen Berger, and then his brother Caden Lyles. If you can just get everyone in there, that would be huge. But I think Jalen Berger personally would be my top get if I'm Jackson State, because he is that type of running back for Wisconsin. So for me, I would love to see Jalen Berger. Yeah, they just had, so it's your boy Oz. They're one of those programs where, Alabama had too many wide receivers. Ohio State had too many wide receivers. You've seen some teams recruit too many O linemen, like in Alabama. They just have such a surplus of running back talent that they just didn't have room on the field for all of them. So for me, you're going to see that a lot, because Wisconsin, every good running back wants to go play in Wisconsin right now, and that's an absolute fact. Let's see. Valley's running back is a beast. Coach Dancy said a new field is coming. I mean, the biggest thing for me is, and this goes back to our first topic, and I know everyone wants to say, like, we need to keep the SWAC what it is, but if a top program came in and they could help you get a TV deal, they could help increase your recruiting market. For me, that's the only reason the SWAC might look to try to add some teams. And the other thing, I talked to BJ Jones about this, the reason I think the SWAC would consider it, on top of their mission statement and all of that kind of stuff, the reason they would do it is because if you add good teams, what it does is, if one, it increases the value of your conference, it really keeps the FAMUs and the Jackson States and the Alcorns from leaving. And so I think that's the number one thing the SWAC commissioner wants to do, is make sure the conference is competitive enough and strong enough not to leave, not to lose this big teams in this realignment. So increasing the money coming in and the funding could help some of these programs catch up to the rest of the pack, including Mississippi Valley. Toss some announcers out too. Yeah, man. Listen, Leon, I'm going to be completely honest. I was watching it on Valley's YouTube channel. I think that was the only place that it was streaming. The announcers, I mean, they would have, like, I would say 10, 15-minute bouts where they didn't even say anything. It was just dead quiet, and they would just forget to talk. And then all of a sudden they wouldn't stop talking, and they weren't even talking about the game at that point. And like, they were making like weird noises into the mic. And Listen, Valley, if you need someone to call games, reach out to some of these YouTubers, man. We know how to talk on the mic. We know football. Get us some jobs, man. I'll call Valley games for y'all, and I'm sure. Hey, let's get CFL on the call. A Blue Blood CFL off script sideline reporter. We can do this. Like get cut day in on it. We got the whole media scene covered here, but nah, yeah, we got to get some better announcers. Personally, Coach Simmons says the SWAC refs got money on the games, man. Too much. Phil Ross said Dancy to Alabama State. That would be interesting if they could get Dancy to come to Alabama State. And also, if you could look into getting someone with strong Alabama ties, I mean, I don't know how hard it would be to get. And I don't love this hire, but if you're looking for someone like a T. Martin, a Damian Craig, a Pat White, someone who has, in terms of connections to the state of Alabama, would be huge for Alabama State. So those are some two other names I'm thinking of. But Dancy would be someone that I think, I'm pretty sure on one of the other shows I heard, they're at least going to reach out to him and offer the job. Unstoppable. I don't understand why Valley has those type of facilities. It's in a better location than Alcorn. I mean, Unstoppable, they just haven't, as sad as it is, I mean, they just haven't won on any big stage. Like they're not selling out that stadium. They're not, winning the SWAC year in and year out. And so for me, I just don't know how you would have those type of facilities when you're not bringing in the type of money to build new facilities like a Jackson State or, a FAMU or someone like that. You have to find a way to win and bring in that income in. And also, and I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, and I know some of the other SWAC channels have mentioned this, the social media presence of some of these programs has to be better. I make our thumbnails for all our videos. There are times where I've covered a team where the picture has to be from like 3 years ago because they don't have any pictures of any players from this season. Like, how do you not find one person that can get on there with a camera and take pictures of the players and expose them and tweet about it and, promote some type of promote your players in some type of way. And so for me, I believe it was Bethune-Cookman. Don't quote me on it. I'll have to double check after the show. They haven't had like a football post about the score of the game since like September. It was like in the middle of a game, like a third quarter, they stopped tweeting about the game and they haven't tweeted about a game since then. It's like they fired the dude mid-game and they didn't have a social media director hire anyone to take over. And so they just stopped tweeting on the account. And then, I mean, even for the Southern Alcorn game, they had like one social media post about one of the biggest games of the year in their home stadium. Why wasn't that, why wasn't that promoted? Why wasn't that tweeted about? I mean, you can just have someone out there go with an iPhone and have someone who knows how to use like Photoshop to help, at least promote some of these players. And I think that's where Jackson State and some of these other programs are lapping people is social media presence, man. You've got to get that up. And I mean, Scotty texted me this weekend, Auburn played Ole Miss, that's where I graduated from. He was texting me videos from Auburn recruiting accounts that were popping up on his page because that's how much social media presence a program like that has. And that's not even a top 15 program in college football. You got to promote players. You have to have a presence because how do you expect recruits to be like, man, I would love to go play at Valley when they don't even they never hear about it. Like there's nothing on social media saying you should come play for Valley, you should come play for Bethune-Cookman, anything like that. You got to make a name brand for yourself, and that's something that a lot of these programs have to do. And here's why I'm not giving them an excuse. And I know Leon said they lost phone reception at Mississippi Valley State. That's fair enough, but they're losing their social media team. Quit. Do you know how many teenagers and people my age, I'm only 24 right now, how many people my age and, from like 18 to like 26, 27 that know how to run social media better than, every single person my age knows how to be a social media star, knows how to use Twitter, knows how to use Instagram, knows how to promote on Snapchat, Facebook. I mean, there are people who that can just go on like a Canva, a Photoshop, and make you some sort of graphics. It doesn't have to be top of the line. Like you see some of these Power 5 ones come out with some ridiculous social media posts and promos. Just make something basic and get it out there. Get your name out there, get a hashtag started, get a Twitter page with a few thousand people following. It's today there's no excuse not to have a social media presence because every kid from 18 to 28 knows how to be a social media manager because we've done it for ourselves. And I mean, just look at all the YouTube pages. I mean, everyone knows where to find myself, find Off Script, find CFL, find SWAC Buzz, find, Cut Day. Every single person, like I said, it is free to set up a social media account and post regular content. And there's I can so not only just SWAC media, I know a lot of people who do just college football podcasts and shows on YouTube. I can name 100 people right now that could run a solid social media account that you would think they had a professional. I'm just saying, and like, there's just no excuse to have that. And I think that's the next step the SWAC has to take is increase their social media presence, have some photographers, have something to interact on social media with and promote your program. Because the number one thing, if you want to solve the draft problem, if you want to solve the recruiting problem, is getting your team out there in front of these players that you want to see. So that's that's my few takes. And I know there's some outside factors, playing into that, and I agree, unstoppable. It's like, how are you going to blame one person? How many alumni have come out of Valley, Bethune, Texas Southern that have the money to at least find a way to do it? And so for me, I think it's unfair to blame one person for every single problem at a school. I mean, listen, the stadium's named after him, but I mean, what you want the dude to do? Just donate his whole savings account to his school. There's some other alumni that can chip in. I don't think you could throw it all on the most famous person who graduated. I mean, Auburn doesn't look at Steve at what's his name, Tim Cook at Apple, and say, I need you to pay all our bills. Like, it's a group effort of donating and things like that. He said, dude, I can send you the stats. Why do you think the coaches at JSU didn't challenge the safety call against MVSU? I'm not sure why they didn't challenge it. I personally think they should have. I thought it was a safety, but maybe in JSU's mind, they said, listen, we're still going to get the ball back. I don't think they can stop us. And so for them, the potential of losing a timeout in that situation or losing the challenge wasn't worth it to them. They were confident in their defense and confidence in that their offense can go down and score. So sometimes it's kind of like a risk assessment, even though it's right. I don't think they thought that 2 points was going to cost them the game either way. So they probably went with the conservative side of just not challenging it because the way the refs called it. And with the challenges, you have to be in your mind. And I'm not sure if they saw a replay or anything like that at Valley, but if you didn't think there was indisputable evidence, you just don't take a chance. So I feel like it was more of like a risk assessment for them to challenge it or not. And so I think that's the biggest thing why they didn't challenge the safety this weekend. Alabama State will bring in a top-notch football coach very soon. I'm excited to see. Listen, I got my ear to the ground. I got some people that I've reached out to. As soon as I hear something, I will let you guys know. If there's like a short list to announce everything, it's just harder to keep up with the SWAC because you have to know somebody to get information. Because, when I cover Power 5, there's 247 sites that I can go look right now. TCU fired Gary Patterson on Sunday night. I got to drop my episode on Monday morning because I knew every single coach that they were going to reach out to and have reached out to. And you just don't have that type of access in the SWAC. So I'm still working to establish my connections to get that type of information for you guys. It's your boy Oz said he gave $10 million to Valley in the past. That's a lot of money, man. If he's given $10 million, it's up to the other alumni to come up with the rest, man, in my opinion. So for me, I don't think you can blame that just on Jerry Rice. But guys, got another show I got to hop on. Y'all can catch me on Frankly Speaking Sports at 8 p.m. Central Time. That's in about 15 minutes. But I appreciate y'all tuning into these mailbags. I started this mid-season, and they've been getting bigger and bigger every week, and I can only thank you guys for that. So I can't believe the support we've been getting. So I thank y'all so much, man. But listen, we'll be back this week with game previews all the rest of the week. We're dropping 2-3 a day up until Friday, and y'all know where y'all can catch the best college football show on YouTube, the only one that covers every single level of college football, man. That's right here on the Blue Bloods. If you're new, subscribe, hit that like button on the video, man, and I will catch y'all live next Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, and let us know your questions that y'all want to talk about next Tuesday, man. And y'all know I got y'all. But I hope y'all have a great Tuesday night. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.